Grüß euch. Welcome back to our Common Class Humera series. We're up to Unit 3, and we have just a couple things to look at for this unit. A little bit of a review, I think, is mainly what we want here. There are two words I find that students struggle with pronouncing, and I think both of it is because of English interference. This looks a lot like the word find, right? But the vowels in German, remember, sound a little bit different than English vowels. So instead of find or finden, we want to pronounce this finden, finden. Here it's the U's, so we're not going to pronounce this culture. I know it looks a lot like the word, or English word for culture, right? But we're going to pronounce this Kultur, Kultur. So notice those longer oo sounds in there, Kultur. From there, we'll go on and just do a quick review of the past tense, because in this unit it's asking you to talk to people or ask people questions about things they have done or what they did like on vacation, things like that. So there are two different forms of past tense, and so far this setup is what we've really focused on in class. So this is the perfect, is the name for it, and we use a helping verb plus a verb. Ich habe verbracht. I spent time. And then we put anything else in here, right? Ich habe Zeit in Deutschland verbracht. I spent time in Germany. But we put the helping verb in the second place in our sentence, and then we put the verb at the end, at least in a statement. If we want to look at the word fond, which is the past tense of finden that's being introduced, this actually uses the past tense a different way. And in English we actually have both those ways too. If we want to think about English examples, we might use the word go. Go is the present tense, right? If we're looking at the past tense, we either say I went or I have gone. So for example, somebody says, where were you? You could say I was at the store, or you could say I have been at the store. Either way it means the same thing, right? The difference is just the grammatical structure of the past tense. So this is the shorter setup to it, the was setup as opposed to they have been. We could say ich fand. So if we're talking about Germany and someone asks you, what did you find interesting? We could answer it this way. Ich fand das Essen interessant. I found the food interesting. And so just like just like a verb in a regular present tense sentence, we just put the verb second in a statement and go on from there, and everything else is just the way you'd be writing in the present tense. So we have two different ways of getting to the same thing. Now, I'll also mention too that in German there is a little bit of a difference in how we use those, and basically it just goes down to whether you're speaking or whether you're writing. And now there's not some rule or law somewhere that says you have to only use the praeteritum when you're writing and you have to use the perfect when you're talking. But if you talk to Germans, the habit is this. When they communicate in writing, they're going to use the praeteritum, this form, and when they're talking, they're going to use the perfect. Now, for class, I'm not really worried about that difference. I want to see you do it however you know it, but if you do want to give yourself that extra challenge to split things up and say, oh, this is a writing assignment, I'm going to use this form, it's a speaking assignment, I'm going to use that form, that'd also be great too and show some good extra knowledge. And then the last thing that we are getting to is just the setup for questions. This unit, the assignment asks you to get in Flipgrid and ask two questions that you might ask to somebody who is coming back from a visit to a foreign country, which makes the past tense important, right? And so I just want to go over quick how we form a question. And that's pretty simple. But there are two ways to do it. If we're using a question word, so wer, was, wo, wann are just a few examples. There's more question words. Then we put that first, and then we put the verb, and then we just go on and add our other elements from there. So for example, if somebody asked, what did you think was interesting? We might say, was fandest du in Deutschland interessant? What did you find interesting in Germany? Ich fand das Essen interessant. I found the food interesting. So you can hear question word, verb, was fandest du in Deutschland interessant? Question word, and then verb. and then we go on there and everything else would phrase just the way any other sentence would. The other thing we're looking at is the verb, the other thing we're looking at is a yes or no question. And for that, we put the verb first. A yes or no question doesn't have a question word, so we just start with a verb. We could say, for example, fandest du das Essen in Deutschland interessant? Did you find the food in Germany interesting? So here the verb first. Fandest du das Essen in Deutschland interessant? And then maybe one last thing I'll mention too, just to be sure that there are no other questions. When I was talking about these setups, I was mentioning for a statement, the verb goes in the second place, right? But that's a little bit different, because here we're talking about statements, whereas down here we're talking about questions. If we were using a question in the past tense, we would follow the word order for down here. Question word verb for a question in the past tense. So if we go back to my example question, was fandest du? Question word verb, right? Was fandest. If we were asking the other question, other example question, fandest du das Essen interessant? The verb is first. Did you find the food interesting? Fandest du das Essen interessant? So if you're wondering, where do I put the verb, that breaks down to question or statement here, and we can use the past tense in either one. Be sure to let me know if you have any questions. I want to make sure you do, and awesome job.